Hi guys, today I'd like to talk about how to write a good IA for math. As you guys know of, for the SL or HL, regardless of the difficulty, you must produce internal assessment for math. And it takes about 20% of your final grade, and then a lot of people struggle with writing a good IA. And as the summer came, if you have enough time to do your research, I'd like to give some tips how to produce a good IA. So a lot of detailed information is given on the blog. For now, I'd like to briefly talk about 3 essential factors that could massively improve your IA. So let's talk about how to choose the topics first. So this is probably the most demanding factor to consider for your IA. Because you will be clueless what type of a real-life example should I choose to use what math to apply, to analyze the phenomenon. So the most often people make mistake with choosing the topics for the IA. They start something what they like in real life example. So for example, you will start with something football you like, and then you will then extend your curiosity by thinking, okay, what type of math can I talk about for football? But often that leads to the digression of your path in math. Because there's so much to talk about in football in terms of math. You can talk about dynamics, you can talk about statistics. So there are just too many ways to describe in math for football. But instead, what you should do for choosing a topic is not to start something with the real life example, but start with the real math. So what I recommend for choosing a topic is that you have to choose the math first. So I'm going to choose math first. So what I mean by choosing the math first is that you're going to come up with something big theorem. Okay? Of course, you're not going to present this theorem in the intro of your IA. But instead, for your research period, you will start thinking, okay, I like to talk about, for example, calculus. Then, what I recommend is that you go over at least option book or first year undergraduate calculus book, right? For example, I'm talking in terms of, for my example of calculus. Then you're going to open the book, and then there will be a lot of chapters discussing about different theorems and phenomena of the calculus. And then you're going to choose some of the theorems that you can familiarize yourself or can understand something with ease because you already have covered in your core module. So let's talk about, I can do the integration, right? And I can do the differentiation. And it happens to be that I'm able to do the chain rule or implicit differentiation. Then I'm going to converge that into with some theorems. For example, what if I like to talk about the length of a curve? So we all know this theorem of from a to b of square root of 1 plus df over dx square. Dx represents the length of the curve for the given function, right? So you're going to come up with this first before talking about the real life example. So as soon as you chose the math, then you will research, okay, then what is the arc length real life example? So that will be the logical processing of writing a good IA. And then, after choosing that example, what you have to do is the reflection. So this is the parts that you can do. This is the parts that you can familiarize yourself to find the length of an arc, find the arc length of a curve. But what if then it extends to not only the function, but equation? What if it's used for ellipse or even the sphere? What if I extend my curiosity to something multidimensional that I can't solve now, but the theorem exists? So reflection must be the punchline. It should be the punchline. So this is the part that most people skip through. But this is one of the major part that you should focus on writing a good IA. This reflection part shows how much you did your research. It shows how much you dedicate to the topics for researching. So these things, you can prove it. You can prove in your IA, you can pretend that you haven't known this one yet, but you're gonna prove it and then use this theorem for your real life example. And then on reflection, you need to talk about your predicament. Well, my curiosity extends to that, but the tool that I have is limited. But then after my research, I realized that if I could do some fancy equations or the theorem, which in this case will be parameterization, then I can extend this case to the 3D. So that is what you have to write on reflection. Something that we can't do, but we know because we have done the research. And the third factor that contributes to writing a good IA is the human factor. So yes, internal assessment, that means it's internally graded. That means your teacher is gonna grade first. And some of the samples of the IA will be sent to the IBO. So you have to make sure, of course, it's a research paper, you must love the topic, but also you must make sure that your teacher also likes the topic. Not necessarily the topics that you came up will be bad, but the topics that you came up with wouldn't be an interesting topic for your teacher or something that he can't help a lot or understand because he or she hasn't done it in the college or something. So for the human factor, you have to make sure that your teacher also likes. I saw a case, one internal assessment was graded 11 points out of 20 at school because the teacher thought that it was a bad paper. It was a bad topic though. Math was good, but this topic wasn't interesting. But the candidate was lucky enough to send off his document to to IBO, and then actually have 8 marks up. 8 marks up. So that's in total of 19 out of 20, so 8% of his final grade. So that's a huge deal, right? So there are so much human factors in IA that people struggle with. So don't bring one example that you like, which could potentially be good for your teacher, so that's good, then you can continue writing. But also you have to consider the fact that your teacher would not like it. So if you can produce something that he's familiar with or she's familiar with, that will be a good start to write a good IA because then he or she could give so many tips in terms of mathematics. Oh, did you have a look into this or did you consider doing this way? But if the topic is out of his reach or out of his reach, it's unlikely that he's going to give you offer and help. So make sure that your teacher likes, and also formatting. You have to make sure the math is rigorous, right? You have to use something at least of optional material. Furthermore, the first year material will be very, very welcoming. But also formatting, your essay must look pretty. So you make sure that there is less typo, and then it follows the research paper concept and format. So make sure you have a good formatting. This in the total of these 3 essential factors, if you could meet them for your IA, it will be a very good paper. Your teachers try hard to give you good marks. If you look at the average mark of people who got 7 for the math, their average mark for the IA is 17. That's 85% of total of IA. Whereas for the papers, it goes about like 71 to 72%, right? So for the IA, the teacher is trying so hard to give you good marks. So if you could meet the 3 factors, teachers will be likely to give you good marks. So thank you very much. The detailed information is given on our blog on the Groomie. Please check that out. I'll see you next time.